Hi again, this is Professor Innes here, your teacher. So this week you've arrived at Metaphysics, which is the part of philosophy which doesn't ask if we know anything, as we did in epistemology. It asks if we were to know something, then what is it? What is this thing we claim to know? So, in that sense, we have a thing like personal identity. You're going to deal with personal identity. It's an example of an intangible which the metaphysician will deal with, because all things in metaphysics deals with those things which are out there but are independent of the physical thing which it describes. So in that respect, therefore, personal identity deals with us physical objects. But is it the case that us physical objects are described by our physical entity? So it's dealing with something which is not tangible in nature, it's not physical, but nonetheless it is important to us. So I mentioned personal identity to start with. We can go back to that later, maybe. But also we have things like free will. Human beings say they have free will. Now, free will is not tangible in nature. We can't touch it, throw it around, experiment upon it, but we claim we have it. And really, if we didn't have free will, then would we be human beings? So it's very important to say that we have free will. But unfortunately, there's a big problem here in that this thing called free will, it might exist, but I don't know where it is. The things I do in life, may revolve around my free decisions. Therefore, I'm the one making those decisions. But if I don't prove that it's my free will which is ending up with these actions, these decisions, then I can't say I have free will. That's when we have problems with, well, it's not a problem as such, but that's when determinism comes along and says, here, right, I've got a lot more evidence than you have to say that you have free will. I can point to determining factors which are the ones that cause you to do certain things. So if I can prove this to be the case, then this thing you call free will does not exist. So in that sense, we metaphysicians looking at this thing called free will, realize that it is non-tangible in nature. It is something which the physicists, the psychologists, the behaviorists refuse to deal with because it's not tangible. We understand that, and it's what we deal with afterwards. But unfortunately, that's why we're dealing with it. It's a problem because we can't see it, we can't throw it around. So we have problems in declaring that human beings have free will. We might like to say that they have free will, but pretty useless in saying it if we can't prove it. Now, again, very important to say we have free will, but again, there's no good arguing for his existence unless evidence is provided. So hopefully that was a bit of an example there of the metaphysician's task, that it is that which comes after physics. The physicists, physical scientists have provided all this evidence for the existence of these material objects and how they work. And they've carried out experiments and they've provided good proof of these things. And as we said with free will, the behaviorists, they can point towards the brain, how that works. And these days you can take a very quick scan of the brain to find out if anything from if you're suffering from high anxiety to if you're depressed, or if you're hyperactive, or whatever, just by taking the scan. So in that respect, they've proven things, but we've got all this stuff left behind. This stuff which comes after physical considerations have been discerned. That's what we call metaphysics, that which comes after physics. So that's the term we have. Not that Aristotle intended it quite in that simplistic fashion, but that's the term we're using. So that's our position in metaphysics. So you're going to deal with things like free will, personal identity, universals, and also cause and effect. And the cause and effect, again, is very problematic. There's a big gap between the cause and the effect. which will move us to in fact saying here, do we have proof that that thing which we claim to be the cause is in fact the cause, just because it happened prior to that thing? We've got problems in saying that. Examples I would bring forward in everyday considerations, say with the riots in Ferguson. We had those riots, and even while the riots were occurring, people were asking what caused the riots. People were on the street rioting, and people were saying, "What caused this? What caused it?" People are not quite sure. So, in that respect, you know, we within metaphysics say here this is a very apt example of the problems of cause and effect, and saying here that one thing causes another is problematic. Therefore, we have to be careful about these causal relationships. And in this course, you're going to be dealing with these things called universals. They exist. We do use them. Or at least we use them to categorize things. So in ontology, which is the study of being, and here we're discussing the being of things as they're arranged within relation to other things. So universals arrange things, which we call particulars, in relation to each other. So a particular bird would be placed into categories of bird, or birds, I should say. So it's a particular physical object, but its essential characteristics which link it to other birds are intangible in nature, and that relationship is intangible. But nonetheless, this is what we use on a daily basis to understand the physical world. If we didn't, we would be very, very befuddled and overwhelmed by the trillions and billions of particular objects out there which are just there. So instead, to make the world for us to be, well, instead for the world to be more comprehensible, we have it organized by categories. Now the question there afterwards, which I just thought about as I was telling you that one, is how this categorization comes about. Is it something which is already categorized for us? So therefore birds are birds because they exist out there in the world of particulars as birds, as a category, or is it us who have come along and made this categorization? Now that's a problem. Now the one I always use to emphasize this problem is the universal of mammal. So to be a mammal, you have certain essential characteristics. I think there are about 7, 8, 9 around essentials to draw to say that an animal is a mammal, therefore belongs to the category of mammal. So they've got to be warm-blooded, give birth to live young, have backbones, and so forth and so on. Now, with this, we have cats, dolphins, and human beings all in the same category. Now, for me, that sounds pretty convenient, I suppose, for whoever's setting up the category. But for me, it looks like a peculiar hodgepodge of different animals placed in there. For what reason, I do not know. Yes, the zoologist may find this very useful, but I can't see the point in it. So that's when I'll come along and say, yeah, these universals are possibly just concepts of the mind, set up by individuals for the sake of convenience. Now we'll say, fair enough, I can see it, but it means that I can come along and criticize these universals. I can come along and make comments about what should and should not be in this category which another person has set up. So that will be the conceptualist viewpoint. Of course, the Platonic viewpoint, as you're going to read, says quite clearly that we have a situation whereby these universals exist independent of us. Therefore, it's not us making up the universal. Either way, it's an intangible. We can't prove whether or not these universals exist independent of us, or they're concepts of the mind. We can't prove one way or the other, but it is the case we have the problem in the sense they are there, but we don't know where they are. Again, if they're concepts or they're forms. Very, very, very much impossible to discern which one is the case. So that's your problem within these considerations of universals. And keep in mind with this metaphysical investigation, particularly with universals, you can therefore come along and criticize them. So again, back to Boise State University, football team. Is it the case that we have miscategorized them as being a good football team? We could look at the essentials of what is a good football team, and thereafterwards try and work out if this particular football team is a good football team. Often we do this in music. You know, what makes up a good rock band or a good whatever genre we're talking about, type of band. And from that, if they don't have the essentials to be that good band in that particular genre, we can therefore have the judgment to say that they should not be considered as a good band. So we can therefore in metaphysics here look at the big white world out there and make value judgments, make judgments which say here what can be in this category and what can't be, or at least ask the question why it is in that category. Alright, so we've got all those questions to ask. So hopefully all this made sense. Again, metaphysics is complex. It is not difficult. We do it all the time. It's just complex. It deals with all these particulars belonging to these categories as we discussed in universals, and free will as well is very complex in a sense. We say that we have free will, but where is it? And nobody can point to it as they could their liver or their kidney. So we've got problems with that one. So keep that in mind here. Keep it in mind. This is complex. It is not difficult. Just try and let the ideas sink in and understand them as being critical of any judgment which says we actually have something which can't be proven. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Any questions, let me know. Speak to you in the journals. Okay, see you later. Bye.